Hi, it's Nikki here from Happy Hormones for Life. And today I'm really excited. We're talking gut health with the fabulous Josh Dech. Now, he's an ex-paramedic and a holistic nutritionist who specializes in Crohn's and colitis and other gut-related issues. Welcome, Josh. Thanks for being here.
Nikki, it's an absolute pleasure to link up all the way across the pond.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about your very interesting story and how you got to be doing this work.
Well, interesting, I think, is a subjective term,
Mm.
but I'll sort of give you the Cliff's notes there. So, like you mentioned, I was a paramedic and I loved doing what I was doing. I've always wanted to be in healthcare in some way. I remember being probably 7 years old. We had a golden retriever who had some abdominal surgery and her stitches, split open, and I was right in there with the gauze pads. It's always just been in my blood. But I realized very quickly it was a very sad reality that our westernized medical system, we had a lot of people going through getting medications, going to the hospital, getting picked up for the same issues week after week after week. They go in, they get more of the same medication or a different medication, and they'd be sent home. Nobody actually got better. They just kept getting sicker. And so I saw this progressive wear and tear and realized it was a sick care system, very reactive rather than proactive. And so through a chain of happy accidents, which is literally my entire career up to this point has been happy accidents, I ended up moving across the country. I got into a different career and I got into personal training, ironically, while I was still looking for another job as a paramedic. One of the first clients who came to see me, she was 57 years old. She had 17 pills of insulin for breakfast. She had 9 more pills and more insulin for bedtime. She had high blood pressure, slept with a CPAP machine. She was on disability at work. Ankles were swelling, kind of looked like borderline congestive heart failure. So she was just on the way down, 57 years old, 26 meds, just circling the drain. And we did nothing but change diet, lifestyle, and regular exercise. And I'll tell you, Nikki, after 2 years, so she started at 57, we're now 59 years old. I entered into her first weightlifting competition in the raw powerlifting division here in Canada, and she broke a world record. It
What?
was amazing. She was off all her medications except for two due to a surgery she had. She was no longer diabetic, no longer had high blood pressure, no longer on disability. Like her body just completely reversed and healed itself. And this was the first window into starting to realize every symptom we have is actually a blessing. The symptoms aren't the problem. The symptoms that we experience are this really amazing communication from our very innate intelligence within our body saying something's wrong. And I'm trying to tell you what that is. We just don't listen and speak the language. And
Mm.
so this woman's process, her whole body is completely shifted. And right up till she was probably 62, 63 when she retired, she kept breaking world records, most of them her own. And it was just an amazing experience. And so long and short, we'll jump ahead. I'm at a trade show and listening to him and talk about the gut and the microbiome, and everything just clicked. I said, like, draw on the floor for 30 minutes during this presentation. I said, that is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. The information she started to share, everything I've seen throughout my career as a paramedic, as a personal trainer, everything started to fall into place. And I'm like, the gut is the epicenter of everything I've seen from hormonal issues to weight gain to asthma to insomnia to fibromyalgia, you name it. The gut's at the epicenter of all of it. And so it's just been this really amazing journey that's gotten us to where we are now. And just through sheer love of the process, I now specialize in really severe IBS, Crohn's, and colitis.
Oh, do you know what? It's such life-changing work, isn't it? Because if you sort somebody's gut health out, it literally transforms their lives, doesn't it? In terms of what they can do, their job, their personal lives, because it's
Oh,
such so
it's amazing.
debilitating, isn't it?
And I think a lot of the Western ideology behind what we're doing here, we sort of believe that diseases are innate to our biology. Like there's nothing we can do about it. It's inevitable and our bodies are falling apart. The best we can hope for is to simply mask the symptoms with drugs, expensive pharmaceuticals as they just pile up and pile up. But that's not the case. Everything you're experiencing is a symptom. Your body's telling you something's wrong. It's asking you to help it. But instead of getting in there and help it when it's screaming, we just put tape over its mouth and go,
Yeah.
look, we covered it up. I can't hear it. It must be fixed. But you're masking symptoms. And so it's a much deeper process, but it's really amazing when you make this little shift to go, wait a minute, if my body's not fallible, it's not biologically programmed to have disease, then what is happening? And it opens the door for a world of tools to actually be able to fix been going on and fix what we're feeling.
So tell us, why is gut health so poor in the Western world generally? What are we doing to ourselves?
Oh boy. I think the better question is what aren't we doing? We start
Yeah.
looking at gut health and gut disease rates as they've started to climb over the years. We've got probably 20% of all North Americans. And I use North Americans because that's the data I have as per like the CDC, but it spreads to all westernized countries, including the UK, Australia, New Zealand. And so we're starting to look at some of this. About 18 to 20% of people have a diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome. That's a diagnosis, gone in, seen a doctor. Other smaller studies report studies, sample sizes 50 to or 5,000, sorry, to about 50 or 60,000 will estimate anywhere from 60 to 72% of people complain of gut issues at least once a week, like gas, bloat, pain, constipation, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, acid reflux, something. So you have two-thirds to three-quarters of your entire population complaining of some kind of issue, while one-fifth are actually diagnosed with something that is considered a medical condition. That is a major epidemic. Globally speaking, okay, North America is 5% of the global population. They have 50% of the world's cases of inflammatory bowel disease. And so
Wow.
it's
Okay.
it's shocking what we're
So
seeing.
why is that? Tell us why.
So, like, I know I did divert from that original question a bit. There's a little context for you. But when we're looking at the why, we have to consider what's changed in our world, right? Genetically, it can't be changing that much. It can't be this unknown thing that's happening. Let's look at some of the basics. We consume more alcohol than ever. Antibiotic use is up 40 plus 50% in the last since the year 2000, probably. We've got sugar consumption. The average American consumes 101 pounds of sugar a year. That's the size of a small child. That's a panda bear, right? That's an immense amount of sugar. We're seeing pesticide usage. Go back to 1990, the last point of these data points. 700 to 900 different pesticides approved for use. Now it's up to 20,000 different pesticides, well known to cause genetic deficiencies, mutations in DNA, cancers. Hell, Bayer, who bought Monsanto, owns this product, glyphosate, which I'm sure your listeners are very familiar with. It's a really nasty herbicide, well known to cause cancers and hormonal dysfunction, the works. They just paid out over $11 billion in lawsuits to settle over 100,000 different cases, with 30 to 40,000 still pending. So they'll be potentially $15 billion deep. And guess what? They're still using the product. They're still allowed to use the product. So the question is why? Number two, is this just a cost of doing business as human life? We start to look at it when you're talking about chemicals on this grand of a scale. I don't mean to say my hairline is probably up this high because my tinfoil hat rubs it off, but it's almost like we're being poisoned. Whether that's intentional or not is a different conversation altogether. But the reality is, 98% of our diseases we have today didn't exist 100 years ago. Neither did most of the foods we consume. The artificial foods, the seed oils, the preservatives and pesticides and food dyes and food coloring. You can attest to this. In the UK, if you look at American imported candy, it has a warning label on it, like we have for cigarettes over here, saying caution, don't eat, can cause cancer. But it's just over here. If you look at the American versions of food that they offer compared to the UK, McDonald's French fries, you guys have three ingredients over there, whether it's some kind of seed oil, potatoes, and salt. Over here, there's 17 ingredients in French fries, most of which are chemical fillers. Why do we need that? Like, what is the purpose of having these except to save money on production to make a better top dollar for mega corporations? And because of this trickle down effect of it being allotted, all these immense amount of chemicals in our food, this is what's poisoning our guts. It's what's destroying us and wreaking so much havoc. I mean, every every disease that we see as a leading cause of death in North America is connected to your gut. Every one of them.
Mm, yeah. And what about I mean, the big one is stress, isn't it? We're all so much more
So
stressed, and
stressed.
that has a huge impact, doesn't it? And I know from my own listeners how much that affects us all here as well as over there. So what does stress do to our gut health?
Well, stress is a funny thing. I can't possibly say just don't be stressed. We
Yeah.
live in a world where we're chronically stressed. If you take it back, we'll go to the traditional adage of the saber-toothed tiger. You
Yeah.
run, you hide, you hunt, you go back to your cave, you're fine. It's these peaks and valleys of high stress, no stress, high stress, no stress. Today, we are chronically bombarded by stress and stressors, whether it's the addiction of our cell phones, which is designed to be addictive, the color schemes is designed to be addictive. If you have an iPhone, you can turn it to black and gray. Just watch how quickly, how boring your phone becomes when you just turn off the
Wow.
color.
I didn't
Um,
know that. Wow.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
there's
going
an
to try
option
that
there.
tonight.
Please do. You'll hate your cell phone. You won't even want to turn it on. And so we have chronic stressors of finances, in politics, in news, in media, and everything going on around us all the time. And so these stressors, what they do on a very basic level, they increase your stress hormones, which can cause a lot of erosion, we'll say, of the gut integrity, the gut lining. You have your mucus linings inside of your intestines, inside of your stomach. And this is a barrier it's again, it's like the sock in a shoe. It protects the organs themselves from abrasion, from physical insult or injury. And so we start to wear down this little mucous membrane, this layer with high stress. Not only that, but we need stomach acid. Fun fact as a sidebar, the number one cause that I see in my practice of acid reflux is actually low stomach acid. And this is why you'll go to take these antacids and it never gets better and you keep getting sicker. And so what's happening because your stress levels will actually drop that stomach acid production because your body goes into fight or flight instead of rest digest. Rest digest means good gastric motility. Food is moving through the system. You're producing digestive enzymes and stomach acid and breaking things down. But on the other hand, now that you're stressed chronically, you're in chronic fight or flight, you get the opposite. You don't produce proper stomach acid. You don't produce digestive enzymes to break down, digest, and absorb your food. The bacteria that comes into your mouth, that goes into your stomach, doesn't die in the stomach acid. It gets into the intestines instead, causing overgrowth and other imbalances of your gut bacteria. We lose motility. So you either speed up or you slow down. Now you're constipated or have diarrhea. There's just a non-stop churn of good processes that happen when we're under chronic stress. And we start to see this happening. Well, that now it starts to disrupt your microbiome. That's an ecosystem of gut bacteria. There's 100 trillion of them outnumbering your cells. Arguments are 2 to 1 or even 10 to 1 of microbes in your gut compared to actual cells that make you as a human being. And so we start to look at this. If one little change from high stress causes all these trickle downs into your gut, which then changes the entire landscape of your gut bacteria because its home has been disrupted, now you open the door to damn near every single disease you can possibly think of. And so, for those of you who are sitting listening to this, going, wait a minute, this maybe explains why I've been sick. It explains why maybe it's not just genetic. It explains why I'm feeling bad. There is an answer. And so when you're left feeling confused, like I'm just getting sick because I got bad luck or God hates me, whatever it might be, it doesn't have to be that way. There's always an explanation for what's going on.
Yeah, perfect. So, on top of all that, we, especially my listeners and followers, are women in their midlife transition. We're either in perimenopause or we're through the out the other side, and we're looking at aging. Okay, so what effect does that have on our gut, and what do we need to be looking out for in terms of those changes that potentially can happen?
Well, there's a lot of different things to consider. I mean, when we're dealing with hormones, you have to consider that your gut bacteria, or your gut and your everything is directly connected. So let's take a look at your hormones, for example, premenopause versus postmenopause, right? Postmenopause, the ovaries have stopped producing estrogen, your body's just not doing the same stuff. What can often happen is your body will actually try to produce some of its own estrogens. And the ways it will do that, if not going through the ovaries, it can actually use the adrenal glands, believe it or not. And so it'll produce these androgens, or think male sex hormones. It'll produce them. They'll get shuttled over to fat cells, and then they can get converted or aromatized into estrogens. So your body's getting some of what it needs. Well, when you're firing your adrenals, what is that? That's a stress response. What happens in high stress? Blood sugar spikes up because your body dumps sugar into the blood for a run and hide type of situation. What happens to the excess sugar if you're not using it? Well, it gets stored into fat cells. And this can be part of that cycle in menopause of weight gain, hot flashes, high stress, gut issues, brain fog, all these different things you tend to experience. It can start with something small like this. And when you have that high stress compounding, now it goes back to the same thing we just talked about for the gut, which disrupts the landscape, which leads to other problems. And so again, we have this compounding effect. And even going back to other issues, look at PCOS, endometriosis. Well, your reproductive organs and your intestines are laying right on top of each other. They touch each other.
Mm.
And so in endometriosis, if you're going in every 2 years, so to speak, for a quote cleanup, where they'll go in and do some ablations, detach tissue, they're going to readhere themselves. That's what they're doing over and over and over. We're never answering the question, what is your gut doing or what's happening to contribute to this process of any kind of inflammatory thing where your body's now adhering your organs together. Right? I mean, you can get tissue growing in all kinds of directions with endometriosis, but it will adhere to those intestines as well.
Mm.
So we have to be very careful about this. And so looking at your gut health, 90% of your neurotransmitters come from your gut. Look at low thyroid. Up to 40% of your thyroid is converted from inactive to active between your gut and your liver. And so, if you're having thyroid problems, is it really your thyroid not producing, or is it that your gut is junked up, which has junked up your liver, and you're not converting it? Therefore, your body goes, wait a minute, we need more, let's overproduce. And so, we're looking at the hormone connection. It's everything.
Huge,
It
isn't it?
really is everything.
Yeah. And what about aging? You mentioned the gut health as being the cornerstone of, disease. And obviously, if you have a healthy gut, does it actually increase our longevity? I'm gonna
Yes.
hope you're gonna say yes there.
Yeah, absolutely. You think about it this way. If you were to take a car and just beat the hell out of it, you take it off roading, you roll it a couple of times, you're slamming on the gas and the brakes, it breaks down a lot faster than if you drive it like a little old lady. And if you baby it and ease on the gas and come off and drive mostly highway, that car is going to last a lot longer. And so the same thing happens in the body. If you're beating on it year after year after year, you get a lot of this oxidation, you get a lot of this stress toward the cells, you get a lot of this breakdown of your telomeres, which are, if you guys are familiar with, you picture your DNA having little shoelace caps on the ends of them. That's your telomere. And as that shoelace cap gets smaller and smaller and smaller every time your cells divide, either one, that shoelace is going to fray, or two, it has to stop itself. That's what the telomeres do. Instead of letting it get smaller and smaller to your DNA frays or mutates and can become cancerous, it just turns off and goes, we're an old cell now. It's called senescence. And so when this senescent or old cell happens, it changes. And this is the process of aging. But that's going to happen a lot faster if you're smoking and drinking, eating inflammatory things. If you have a lot of oxidization or oxidation within the body where you're getting, think of it kind of like punching holes in cells, almost like rust wearing and tearing. It's a stealing of electrons. And that happens when we're highly inflamed, consuming seed oils, highly stressed. And so in the best case scenario, like gold standard, we're all going to be living and working on a farm, born vaginally, fully breastfed, never exposed to pesticides, traveling around, meeting people, working with the animals on a farm, eating the natural, normal foods that you get from the earth. This gives you the most robust microbiome, which then produces the best neurotransmitters. It helps balance the best hormones. It's got the best detoxification mechanisms. Genetic expression is influenced directly by your gut. Even how social you feel like being comes from your gut. And that's the gold standard. So you have this beautifully developed ecosystem. But on the other hand, if you're doing the opposites, born C-section, bottle fed, antibiotic usage, staying indoors, hyper sanitizing, you're not getting this ecosystem, this microbiome. So you're not getting all those further developmental benefits.
Okay, so many of us will be in that latter situation because we can't obviously impact how we're born or how
Totally.
we were brought up. So what do we do to look after our guts? Let's go from really just mild symptoms and then to really kind of quite serious symptoms. Is there a scale of what we need to do with our diet and lifestyle to manage that and make ourselves better?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to write that down versus minor or serious. There's a couple of things to consider. Like I'm obviously not a medical doctor, so I can't say, go talk to your doctor about hormone replacement therapy. Sometimes it can be really beneficial for women dealing with a lot of menopausal issues because those symptoms are so severe. Or we even have to consider like estrogen plays a role in maintaining the integrity of your gut lining, for example, right? It helps modulate the microbiome. It can support digestive function. Estrogen levels will increase. This can lead to a change in the composition of your gut microbiome, and it can increase gut permeability or it can change that permeability. And so if your hormones are all out of whack, if you're up and down, the estrogen's declining, you're getting these hot flashes, progesterone's in and out, it can start to change even on a level of your gut, what's going on a permeability or a microbiome level. It even has a role. Estrogen has a huge role to play in your immune system. And so sometimes that can be a therapeutic tool to get your body into rebalancing itself to becoming healthy and healing again. On the other hand, look at our diet and lifestyle. Just like we talked about, smoking, drinking, high stress, over sanitizing, consuming foods that are inorganic. I will not eat an inorganic fruit. There's a list you might be familiar with called it's from the Environmental Working Group. You can go to ewg.org. They have the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. The Dirty Dozen are the 12 most pesticide-laden, filthy, horrible foods you could possibly ever eat. The average strawberry in the USA, I believe there was a test recently done, found 14 different chemical pesticides. And so
Nice.
Right? Isn't that wonderful? And so allegedly, Gary Brecka, I haven't found the study and I haven't been able to reference it at all, but allegedly there was a small study they had done where they took a commercial juice press and pressed out a bunch of strawberries that were inorganic and resprayed crops with the same effect as pesticides because it was so concentrated,
Wow. Okay. Right.
right? Which is shocking. And so we look at this. Yeah, go ahead.
Just wanted to say that website is the US version. We have a UK version called the Pesticide Action Network, and they also have a clean 15 or clean dozen or dirty dozen, whatever. So guys, look at that because
Wow.
it will be different in the UK because we have different regulations, but there are still certain fruit and veg that we really need to avoid because they're not organic and they are treated with these same chemicals. So carry on, Josh.
Oh, sure. And the good news is the UK has about 2,000 pesticides approved. The US is 20,000. So again, poisoning a population. But
Yeah, but
when we
since
start to
we've
look
come
at,
out of the EU, I think that's getting worse. So because we were protected under
Mm,
the EU regulatory scheme, so I think from that point of view, we are getting worse. But I can see, yeah, there's still a huge difference.
well, that is wild. The things I guess I never really thought about. Well, let's carry on that thread then. So we got pesticides we got to watch for. If it's on the dirty dozen list, just buy it organic or don't buy it at all. It's that simple. The clean 15 you really don't got to worry about.
What about
Looking
washing,
at
Josh? Is it possible to wash those off, or does it only sort of take off the surface one bits?
Again, allegedly it'll take some off, like a simple cold water with baking soda, soak for 2 minutes, a little bit of vinegar, let it sit for a minute, then rinse it. It doesn't taste like anything. I do it all the time. But you have to keep in mind these fruits like raspberries, strawberries, they are so soft, they're permeable, they're like
Mm,
sponges. If
mm,
you soak a strawberry in water overnight, it's going to be this soppy mess
mm.
because it absorbs so much. And so I honestly don't have the data directly to say here's how much pesticide is inside versus outside versus washing it, but I can tell you I won't bother because if you took again this alleged study and press the juice out, you're getting the inside and the outside, and that's where you're
Yeah.
getting a lot of this concentration.
Yeah, I
So
guess
I won't
especially
use them.
for like really look out for like soft fruits, things like that, where maybe apples with a harder skin you might be able to get away with. But really, buy
Yeah.
organic wherever possible. So organic, eat organic. What else can we do?
Yeah, it's amazing you got to pay more money for poison-free food. So we can eat organic. We can practice, like we can't eliminate stress from our lives, but we can practice very simple stress management techniques. Sitting down, if you're driving 5 kids over to soccer practice, throwing them in the van, shuttling some food down your throat, swallow like a pelican, you don't get to chew, then it's time to take a breath, breathe once or twice, take time, 20 to 30 chews. These actually stimulate those rest and digest responses. Physically cooking, touching your own food stimulates digestion. Smelling the food as it's cooking stimulates digestive enzymes. That chewing process, that taking the breath puts you into rest and digest, which gives your body a better fighting chance to actually break down your food and to assimilate it. It takes you out of this fight and flight. Even if it's only 20%, it's 20% better than you would have been had you swallowed the food like a pelican. But isn't it amazing? There's 100,000 plus chemicals, chronic disease everywhere. We're in an epidemic of autoimmune disease and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and gut disease, and we're still not dead. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, we are up against a world full of poisons coming in, and we're not dead, which means our bodies are incredible at healing and detoxing and getting rid of this stuff and fighting back against all the poisons in our world, which means there is so much more hope. Look at you right now. Maybe if you're listening, you're going, wait a minute, I've got one or two of these things. You're listening to me speak and go, I've got a little bit of a gut issue. You're hearing me talk and go, that sounds familiar like my child or my family member. What can we do? They're not dead yet. Their
Yeah.
body has an incredible amount of healing. And so if we can simply remove 25% of it, imagine how much you can heal by simply going to the clean 15, by simply changing around what you buy. Your shirts, for example, there are lots of companies that will do organic cotton materials. Organics, you're not covered in the pesticides or fire retardants or other things. Now,
Mm.
maybe if they're $20 a shirt instead of seven, it's a little bit of a different purchase, but start to make those changes slowly.
Yeah.
Your personal hygiene chemicals, perfumes are known endocrine disruptors. They have phthalates in them. These PFAs are forever chemicals. They're inside all the things we use. If we slowly make these transitions over 6 months to a year, when something runs out, it's empty. Oh, my cleaning supply, my dishwasher detergent is empty. I wonder if there's a better one on the market that's enzyme based instead of chemical based. Oh, my perfume is out. I wonder if there's a natural essential oil I can use. Fun hint, whatever the reason being, vanilla extract behind the ear seems to go a long way. I don't know what it is, but there was a study done for perfumes that men preferred a vanilla extract to like most perfumes out there. And it's cheap, right? And it's natural. And so there's lots of different things that are available out there that you
Mm.
can use. It's just making the small transitions. And look at it this way. Our bodies are this incredible, beautiful, miraculous design. It's this really incredible meat suit that just is always healing itself. And we look at hunter-gatherer tribes. They don't have nearly any of the diseases that we do. The further away you go from Western society, the less disease you see. You don't see joint pain. You don't see infertility in obesity and diabetes or Parkinson's in Alzheimer's. It's so, so few and far between, so rare. And they eat 10 times more cholesterol than we're told we should. And they're perfectly fine. And so we
Mm.
start looking at how these things translate. We have to understand it's like our bodies have been sort of designed with very powerful, but let's say relatively simple tools. If you could clean your house, all you needed was a broom and a dustpan, you'd be perfectly fine. But the minute you go and dump a landfill's worth of garbage into your house, the broom and a dustpan no longer cuts it.
Mm.
And that's what we're doing to ourselves now. We're wondering why we're all sick. There's garbage piling up in our system. And so by
Mm.
making those small changes, we can slowly start to clean out and heal. And many of us, yes, we're at a stage now where the broom and dustpan no longer helps. We do need therapeutic grade supplements or healthcare practitioners to come in and help our body clean out. It's not as simple as doing a liver detox or a 10-day juice cleanse. It's not going to do anything for you, I promise. It's a lot deeper than that because now it's residual damage. Right? You got a leak in the roof, you patched the leak, whoop-dee, but now everything's wet and moldy and falling apart. And there's a lot of residual cleanup to be done. And so the things we can do are very simple. Simple stress management, simple replacement, and simple avoidance where possible. If it comes in a box or a package or a bag, just don't eat it. Just don't put it in your mouth. You'll be fine. And that's how we can slowly make these changes because you're not dead yet. And your body has a remarkable amount of tools to continue healing if you just ease off the gas a little bit.
Yeah. I love that. I love that we all still have hope. Whatever age you are, there is, it's never too late, is it, to start healing? And
Never.
also, just getting some help if you're actually further along that line and you have got really debilitating symptoms. You really do need some help to kind of clear up that junk. So,
Yeah.
before you go, I want to just ask what you think about probiotics as supplements to feed the microbiome, because I've got a view that I think I prefer to get them from foods just because you kind of have a natural mixture in there. But what do you think about them as supplements and versus food?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think they can be a great tool. I think they are very often used improperly, overused, overrecommended, or they're seen as some magical medical cure. And the reality is, most probiotics we'll consume are going to be dead. It's actually the postbiotics that they've produced that create signaling molecules, they create benefits, they're anti-inflammatory. And so it's very temporary, in and out, couple of days, and boom, they're gone. And so I don't want anybody to think probiotics are a magic cure-all. On the other hand, they're very dependent. You can try them. They're relatively considered safe to just try. Like worst case scenario, you feel a bit upset or diarrhea or whatever, and stop. But on the other hand, you know, you're asking a question about the more minor versus more severe cases and what to do. It's all the same. Like we have to start the same base layer. But depending on how long it's been going on, the amount of residual damage, it can all be reversed. Crohn's and colitis, for example, really severe, is a fully reversible condition. We're told it's autoimmune, it's genetic, there's nothing you can do. Hundreds of cases now, we fully reversed because everything that they say about these things, the math doesn't add up. It's a lie. They're not all autoimmune. Less than 50% of these cases actually have any antibodies at all. It can't be genetic because 5% of the globe, North America, has 50% of the world's cases of Crohn's and colitis. So it can't be genetic. And it can't be unknown cause because we've seen cases go from 2 million to 8 million in 30 years. Something has to be causing it. So the math doesn't math. And we start looking at this and going, wait a minute, there's more to the puzzle. Should I take probiotics? Should I not? Just to circle back to that question, some people can take them, some people can't. But to give you an idea, the more severe the case, the more cautious I would be.
Yeah.
I had a client of mine who was recently actually, so Curtis, he's another practitioner in the program, was working with her, and she had really severe colitis. She actually had a parasite issue, had a mold issue, which really drove up the immune pathways that manage histamines. So we all know histamines, itchiness, hives, rashes, swelling, that type of thing. And so if you're eating food and you get really phlegmy or you get bloated or kind of moody, you might have a histamine issue. If certain things give you rashes, it's clearly a histamine issue. And what was happening for her is she was making a lot of bone broth for her gut because it's supposed to be gut healthy. It made her problems worse because her histamines were already high. Bone broth is a high histamine food. There are many probiotics which are high histamine. And so they might be good for one person and bad for you. Probiotics might create a signaling situation in your body that your body can't handle because that immune pathway, it's like a cup. It's already over, it's already right to the brim. It's bubbling over. One drop makes it overflow. Those probiotics can be that drop. They can be the thing that causes your body to overflow and sends you into a flare up or sends you into an issue. It can be the thing that tips over your histamines. On the other hand, they can be really beneficial. But my advice is this: seek a practitioner, professional, either way. The internet makes gut health seem really simple.
Yeah.
Like, take these probiotics, eat, drink some kombucha, have some ferments, and you'll be fine. They can cause a world of issues. Simple things, glutamine can cause a hell of a problem. Curcumin can cause a hell of a problem because they can drive these immune pathways if you're already overdrawn. And
Mhm.
so, unfortunately, none of this is sort of a DIY project,
Yeah.
especially the more severe cases, but they're all very fixable. And just use extreme caution on probiotics because they can cause a lot of problems, but have some benefits in context. But you roll the dice. There's 20 million different probiotics of strains and species you can take.
Yeah.
So
How do you know
Godspeed.
which one
You
you're
know?
taking and which one you're needing? Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a
Big
real
game of Russian roulette.
needle in a haystack. Yeah, absolutely. Josh, this has been so interesting. Thank you so much for coming in to talk about this. Such a fascinating subject. I think we could go on all day, but we have to stop. Thanks for coming in, and take care and see you soon.
Thanks so much for having me.